It's 2 a.m. on May 23rd, 1918. The air in New Orleans is thick, heavy, and suffocatingly hot. Inside a small apartment on the corner of Upline and Magnolia Streets, Joseph Maggio and his wife Catherine are fast asleep. They are hard-working Italian immigrants, entirely exhausted from running their local grocery store. Everything is quiet. Suddenly, a faint, rhythmic scratching sound cuts through the humid silence. It's the sound of a hand drill slowly boring holes into the bottom panel of their wooden back door. Within minutes, the panel is quietly pried loose. A large silhouette slips through the opening, moving like a ghost across the linoleum floor. He doesn't bring a weapon with him. He doesn't need to. He walks straight to the kitchen, scans the dark, and finds exactly what he's looking for: Joseph's own heavy, industrial-grade meat cleaver. What followed in that bedroom was a scene of such chaotic, breathless brutality that it fundamentally broke the psyche of the city. Hours later, Joseph's brothers, sleeping in the adjoining room, wake up to a strange, wet groaning sound. They rush next door to find a nightmare. Joseph and Catherine have been savagely attacked. On the kitchen floor, the killer left the blood-soaked cleaver alongside a neat pile of his own discarded clothes. He didn't steal a single penny from the cash register. He didn't touch Catherine's jewelry. This wasn't a robbery. It was a message. And as the police sirens began to wail through the French Quarter, investigators realized that a phantom had just declared war on the city. Within weeks, the initial confusion inside the New Orleans Police Department mutated into absolute cold panic. The attack on the Maggios wasn't an isolated incident. It was the blueprint. Over the hot summer months of 1918, the exact same terrifying pattern repeated across the city grid. The targets were almost always Italian grocers. The entry point was always a chiseled-out back door panel. Superintendent John Mooney assigned his absolute best detectives to the case, but they found themselves working inside a complete forensic vacuum. This predator was meticulously organized. He struck in the dead of night, never left an eyewitness alive, and intentionally used the victim's own household tools, axes and cleavers found on the properties, before leaving them out in the open to mock the authorities. The local newspapers labeled him the Axeman, and a heavy, suffocating paranoia settled over the neighborhoods. Citizens began taking turns staying awake all night, sitting on their porches with loaded shotguns. Families barricaded their back doors with heavy iron bars. Every creak of a floorboard, every shifting shadow in the hallway became a potential encounter with the phantom. But just as the police department prepared to launch a massive, citywide dragnet, the Axeman did something completely unprecedented. He stepped out of the dark and sent a letter straight to the printing presses. On March 13th, 1919, a heavy, stamped envelope landed on the desk of the editor at the New Orleans Times-Union. The letter inside was typed with an unhinged, poetic arrogance that sent a massive shockwave straight through the state. The letter began with these exact words: "Hell, March 13th, 1919. MST. Mortal. They have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surround your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell." The writer claimed he was a lover of jazz music, and he issued a bizarre, terrifying challenge to the entire population of New Orleans. He stated that on the following Tuesday night, March 19th, he would cruise the streets of the city looking for his next victims. But he offered a single, highly specific escape clause. He wrote, "I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose house a jazz band is in full blast at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you." The editor sat frozen at his desk. Was this a sick, elaborate hoax by a local prankster, or was it a direct decree from a serial axe murderer giving a city of 250,000 people less than a week to play for their lives? Tuesday, March 19th, 1919, became a night completely unlike any other in human history. New Orleans didn't lock its doors and huddle in the dark. Instead, the city exploded into a chaotic, desperate wall of sound. Nobody was willing to take the risk. Every single professional jazz musician, amateur player, and street busker was hired at astronomical rates. Massive dance halls, smoky jazz clubs, and local neighborhood taverns were packed to absolute capacity. Neighborhoods that had been terrified for months suddenly threw open their windows, placing mechanical phonographs on their sills, blasting classic jazz records into the dark streets. Famous local composers quickly churned out a brand new sheet music track titled The Axeman's Jazz, and families gathered around their living room pianos, playing the frantic chords over and over again until their fingers bled. If you walked down Canal Street that night, the air wasn't filled with the silence of fear. It was a literal battle of brass, horns, and drums, all screaming into the night to keep a monster at bay. It was a beautiful, terrifying spectacle of a population using rhythm as a protective shield against an invisible executioner. As the sun slowly rose over the Mississippi River on the morning of March 20th, the music finally stopped. The city held its collective breath, waiting for the morning police blotter to report the worst. But as the precinct logs came in, a stunning reality became clear. Not a single home had been broken into. Not a single axe had been raised. The axeman had kept his word. The jazz party had worked. But the mystery only deepened from there. A few months later, in October 1919, the attacks abruptly stopped entirely. The axeman simply vanished from a grid, leaving behind a trail of 12 victims and a file that would remain open and unresolved forever. Who was he? Was he a lone madman, a highly organized syndicate enforcer, or truly the phantom he claimed to be? We will never know. Because the crimes occurred over a century ago, the original case files, the handwritten letters, and the identity of the axeman remain locked in the permanent vault of history. He pulled off one of the most terrifying theatrical crime sprees in American history, leaving New Orleans with a haunting legacy, a city that literally had to play its own soundtrack just to survive the night. I want to know what you guys think about this legendary case. Do you think the axeman was actually a local musician, an eccentric store owner, or a completely unhinged entity who used jazz to mask his true motives? Let's talk about it down in the comments below, and please keep the discussion highly constructive. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, look out for one another, and I'll see you in the next deep dive. Bye.